Welcome to our channel. Today we are going to talk about the rise and fall of the British Empire. As one of the largest and most powerful empires in history, spanning over a quarter of the world's landmass and controlling one-third of its population, the British Empire had a profound impact on the world we know today.
When the British pulled out of India, they left behind an entire civilization.
A greedy and racist British Raj financed its industrial revolution by robbing India.
The British Empire began its rise to power in the late 16th century, with the English establishing colonies in the Americas and later in the Caribbean. These colonies were founded primarily for economic reasons, as the British sought to establish trade routes and acquire valuable resources. The first successful colony was Virginia, established in 1607, which became a major source of tobacco for export. Over the next few centuries, the British expanded their colonial holdings to other parts of the world. They established colonies in India, Africa, and Australia, among other places. The British also established a powerful navy, which helped them control the seas and protect their trade routes. One of the key factors in the early rise of the British Empire was its economic strength. The British had a thriving economy, fueled by trade and manufacturing. They were able to use this economic power to finance their colonial expansion and establish dominance over other nations. Another factor was the British military strength. The British had a powerful navy and a well-trained army, which allowed them to project their power around the world. They were able to use this military strength to protect their colonies and expand their empire. The Age of Exploration, which began in the late 15th century, was a key factor in the rise of the British Empire. During this time, European nations were exploring new territories and establishing colonies around the world. The British were one of the most successful nations in this era of exploration, with explorers like Francis Drake and James Cook leading expeditions to new lands. The exploration of new territories allowed the British to acquire new resources and establish trade routes. They were able to establish colonies in areas with valuable resources, such as India, which became a major source of cotton, tea, and spices. The British were also able to establish trade routes with China, which became a major market for British goods. Part 3: The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a major factor in the rise of the British Empire. The Industrial Revolution brought about significant changes in manufacturing and transportation, allowing the British to produce goods more efficiently and transport them around the world more quickly. The British were at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution, with innovations such as the steam engine and the power loom. These innovations allowed the British to produce goods at a lower cost, making them more competitive in the global market. The Industrial Revolution also had a significant impact on the British Empire's military strength. The British were able to produce weapons and ships more quickly and efficiently, allowing them to maintain their dominance on the seas. Trade was a crucial factor in the rise of the British Empire. The British were able to establish trade routes with other nations, allowing them to acquire valuable resources and establish markets for their own goods. The British East India Company, established in 1600, was a key player in the global trade network, with a significant presence in India, China, and Southeast Asia. The British also established a global financial network, with banks and trading companies around the world. This financial network allowed the British to finance their colonial expansion and maintain their dominance in the global economy. One of the major factors was World War II. The war left Britain heavily in debt and weakened its economy. The war effort had drained the country's resources, and its infrastructure was in shambles. Additionally, the war had also led to the loss of many of Britain's colonies, which had contributed greatly to its economy. The colonies were now seeking independence, and Britain was losing its grip on its once vast empire. The loss of India in 1947 was a major blow to Britain's empire. India had been the jewel in the crown of the British Empire and had been a major source of revenue for Britain. But the Indian independence movement, led by figures like Mahatma Gandhi, was gaining momentum, and it became clear that India would soon be granted independence. This was a huge setback for Britain, as India had been its most valuable colony. The Suez Crisis of 1956 was another major event that contributed to the downfall of the British Empire. The crisis was sparked when Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, which had been under British control since 1882. Britain, along with France and Israel, invaded Egypt in an attempt to regain control of the canal. But the United States and the Soviet Union condemned the invasion, and Britain was forced to withdraw its forces. The crisis was a humiliation for Britain and showed that its military power was no longer enough to maintain its empire. Another major factor in the downfall of the British Empire was the rise of nationalism in its colonies. As the colonies became more educated and politically aware, they began to demand greater autonomy and eventually independence. Britain was unable to resist this growing tide of nationalism, and many of its colonies gained independence in the years following World War II. The decline of the British economy was also a major factor in the downfall of the empire. In the post-war years, Britain's economy struggled to keep up with the economies of other industrialized countries, such as the United States and Japan. Britain's outdated industrial infrastructure and the rise of new technologies made it difficult for Britain to compete in the global market. The country was also burdened with high levels of debt, which made it difficult to invest in new industries and modernize its economy. Finally, the decline of British power was also due to internal factors. Britain had become a divided society, with deep class divisions and growing racial tensions. The country was also facing a crisis of identity, as its traditional values were being challenged by new social movements and cultural changes. This internal strife made it difficult for Britain to project a united front to the world and weakened its standing on the global stage. In conclusion, the downfall of the British Empire was a complex process that was influenced by a range of factors. The loss of India, the Suez Crisis, the rise of nationalism, the decline of the British economy, and internal divisions all contributed to the empire's decline. Britain's empire had been built on the exploitation of its colonies, and eventually, the people of those colonies demanded their independence. The British Empire may be gone, but its legacy lives on, and the lessons learned from its downfall continue to shape the world today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. Thank you for watching.